The accusation. The council chamber of the Galactic Union stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian floor. Above, a dome of transparent aluminum showed the stars beyond, thousands of them burning in the darkness of space. Elena Torres walked across that floor with measured steps. Her boots made soft sounds that echoed in the vast space. She was alone. Behind her, the human delegation's platform sat empty except for her assistant, Marcus Webb, who watched with worried eyes. Elena was not a large woman. She stood barely 5.5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her uniform was plain dark blue with no decorations. No medals. No symbols of rank. Just a small silver pin on her collar showing Earth's continents. She looked like a schoolteacher, not a diplomat. That was intentional. Around her, on platforms that floated at different heights, sat representatives from 43 different species. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Elena's mind struggled to process their shapes. There were beings made of crystalline structures that sang instead of spoke. There were massive creatures covered in armor plates that had evolved on high-gravity worlds. There were small, quick things with too many eyes and limbs that folded in ways that hurt to watch. All of them were watching her now. At the highest platform sat Chancellor Vorak of the Krell Empire. The Krell were warriors. They stood 8 feet tall with 4 arms, each one corded with muscle. Their skin was deep red, almost black, and covered with scarred plates that told stories of battles survived. Vorak's eyes were golden and cold. He had ruled the Krell Military Council for 30 years. He had conquered 12 systems personally. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Beside him, on a platform that shifted colors constantly, sat Diplomatic Prime Thesha of the Vexari Collective. The Vexari were shapeshifters, but they preferred forms that put others at ease. Thesha had chosen something almost human, with smooth purple skin and large eyes that sparkled with intelligence. But Elena knew better than to trust that gentle appearance. The Vexari had destroyed 3 species through manipulation alone, never firing a single weapon. They were masters of words, of politics, of finding weaknesses and exploiting them. Together, Vorak and Thesha represented the 2 great powers of the Galactic Union. Military might and political cunning. And today, they had joined forces against humanity. The chamber fell silent. Chancellor Vorak stood, and the movement drew every eye. He raised one massive hand, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a star map. Human space glowed in pale blue at the edge of the map. 12 systems. Small. Insignificant. Members of the Union, Vorak began, his voice filling the chamber without need for amplification. We gather today to address a matter of growing concern. The human question. Elena felt Marcus tense behind her. She kept her face calm. Humanity was granted provisional membership in our Union 17 years ago, Vorak continued. In that time, they have expanded to only 12 systems. Their fleet consists of 47 vessels, most of them small. Their military academies produce fewer than 1,000 officers per year. By every measure, they are weak. The hologram changed. Now it showed incidents from the past decade. Elena recognized each one. She had been present for most of them. When the Krell claimed mining rights to the Tau Ceti asteroid belt, which humans had been surveying, what did humanity do? Vorak asked. The hologram showed human ships withdrawing. They retreated. They filed a diplomatic protest that went nowhere. They accepted the loss. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some were sympathetic. Most were not. When the Vexari Collective negotiated trade agreements with human colonies, Vorak continued, agreements that heavily favored Vexari merchants, what did humanity do? The hologram showed Elena herself, younger, signing documents. They accepted terms that no other species would tolerate. They smiled and thanked us for the opportunity. More murmurs. These were louder. Elena heard the word pathetic in 3 different languages. When pirates from the outer reaches attacked human cargo vessels, killing crew members and stealing supplies, what did humanity do? The hologram showed ransom payments being transferred. They paid. Again and again. They paid rather than fight. Vorak let the image fade. He looked directly at Elena. His golden eyes showed something that might have been pity. Or contempt. Perhaps both. Humanity has shown, repeatedly, that they fear conflict. They avoid battle at any cost. They choose humiliation over confrontation. He paused. This is not the behavior of a species worthy of full Union membership. This is not the behavior of a species that deserves access to strategic resources and protected trade routes. This is the behavior of prey animals hoping predators will not notice them. The chamber erupted. Aliens spoke over each other in dozens of languages. The translation matrix in Elena's ear could barely keep up. She heard calls for humanity to be stripped of membership entirely. She heard suggestions that human worlds be placed under protective oversight by stronger species. She heard laughter. Diplomatic Prime Thesha stood gracefully. The chamber quieted immediately. When Thesha spoke, her voice was silk over steel. Chancellor Vorik speaks with passion, as warriors often do, she said with a small smile. But let me add perspective from a diplomatic viewpoint. I have studied human history extensively. I have read their literature, examined their political structures, analyzed their decision-making patterns. She turned to face Elena directly. Humans are not merely conflict-averse. They are conflict-terrified. Thesha waved her hand, and new holograms appeared. These showed human cities, human children playing in parks, human families gathered for meals. Look at their worlds, Thesha continued. They spend enormous resources on what they call social programs. Healthcare, education, art, infrastructure. Meanwhile, their military receives barely 15% of their total budget. By comparison, the Krell dedicate 60% to military readiness. Even my own Vexery, who prefer negotiation to warfare, maintain a military budget of 35%. She let that sink in. Humans build hospitals while others build warships. They write poetry while others forge weapons. They seek compromise while others seize opportunities. Thesha's voice grew softer, more dangerous. This is not a species that will ever contribute meaningfully to Union defense. This is not a species that will stand beside us when true threats emerge. This is a species that will hide behind treaties and hope stronger beings protect them. The murmurs of agreement were louder now. Elena saw representatives from smaller species nodding. Even some who had been friendly to humanity looked uncertain. A new voice spoke from a lower platform. Ambassador Kresh of the Thorian Combine. The Thorians were insectoid, with multiple mandibles and compound eyes. They had no concept of individual identity, living instead as hive minds. Kresh spoke for 7 million Thorian individuals simultaneously. We propose a formal motion. Kresh clicked and chittered. The translation came through flat and emotionless. Humanity should be reclassified as a protected species. They will retain basic membership privileges but will surrender all voting rights on military and strategic matters. They will pay increased fees for Union protection. Their expansion will be limited to current territory. This motion will be voted upon at tomorrow's session. Protected species. Elena knew what that meant. It was a polite term for second-class citizenship. Protected species had no voice in Union decisions. They paid tribute. They followed rules made by others. Eventually, most protected species found themselves absorbed by larger powers, their independence a fiction maintained only in official documents. Chancellor Vorik smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. A wise proposal. Let us give humanity one final chance to demonstrate that they deserve better. Ambassador Torres, you have addressed this council before. You have always been polite. You have always been reasonable. You have always been weak. He leaned forward. Tomorrow, before we vote, we will give you 30 minutes to convince us otherwise. 30 minutes to prove that humanity is not the cowardly species we believe you to be. The chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter in 40 different species. Elena stood in the center of it all, a small figure in a plain uniform, surrounded by beings who had already decided her species' fate. She waited until the noise died down. Then she spoke for the first time. I accept your offer, Chancellor Vorik. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. 30 minutes. That will be sufficient. Thesha tilted her head, studying Elena with those large, sparkling eyes. Sufficient for what, Ambassador? To apologize? To beg? To offer us whatever concessions you think might save your species from the consequences of its own weakness? Elena looked at the Vexery diplomat. Then she looked at Vorik. Then she let her gaze sweep across the entire chamber, meeting the eyes of species who had judged humanity without understanding. Sufficient to help you understand what you have mistaken for fear, Elena said simply. I will need access to certain historical records from Earth. Classified records. And I will need direct communication with our defense command. She paused. After that, we can discuss whether humanity fears battle, or whether we fear something else entirely. Something in her tone made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Vorik's smile faded slightly. Thesha's eyes narrowed. Granted, Vorik said slowly. Use your 30 minutes however you wish, Ambassador. We will reconvene tomorrow at midday. And then the Union will decide humanity's place in the galaxy. The platforms began to descend. The session was over. Aliens filed out of the chamber in groups, already discussing tomorrow's vote. Elena heard their predictions. Most gave humanity a 10% chance of avoiding protected species status. Some gave them less. Marcus rushed to Elena's side as soon as they were alone. He was young, barely 30, with dark skin and darker eyes that showed intelligence and worry in equal measure. "Ambassador, what are you going to tell them?" he asked urgently. "We have no military victories to show. No great battles won. Nothing that will impress these species. They respect strength, and we have deliberately chosen not to display strength for a century." Elena walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the empty chamber. "That is precisely what I intend to explain, Marcus. Why we made that choice. And what we chose to leave behind. They will not care about our reasons," Marcus insisted. "Vorak only understands power. Thesha only understands leverage. The rest follow their lead. We need to show them something that changes the equation. Something that makes them fear us, or at least respect us." Elena stopped walking. She turned to look at her young assistant. In the dim light of the chamber, her eyes seemed darker than usual. Deeper. Like they held things Marcus had never seen. "Fear," she said quietly. "Yes. Perhaps that is exactly what we need to show them. Not fear of battle, but the thing we truly fear. The thing that made us choose peace not because we were weak, but because we remembered what strength costs." Marcus stared at her. He had worked with Ambassador Torres for 3 years. He had seen her negotiate treaties, resolve disputes, navigate complex diplomatic situations with patience and grace. But he had never heard that tone in her voice before. It made something cold move down his spine. "What are you planning?" he asked. Elena resumed walking. "Contact Admiral Sarah Chen at Earth Defense Command. Tell her I am invoking Protocol Remembrance. Full historical disclosure. Level Omega clearance." Marcus stopped walking. Protocol Remembrance. He had heard of it only once, in a briefing that had been immediately classified. It was something the Earth government had created after humanity joined the Union. A contingency plan for if the galaxy ever needed to understand what humanity truly was. "Ambassador," he said carefully. "Level Omega files include everything. The world wars. The nuclear weapons. The genocide. The biological warfare. The AI conflicts. The things we swore we would never speak of again. The things we built monuments to remember so we would never repeat them." Elena reached the chamber door. It opened silently before her. Beyond, the corridor stretched away into darkness punctuated by soft lights. "Yes," she said. "All of it. Tomorrow, the Galactic Union will learn why humanity fears war. Not because we cannot fight." She walked through the door. "Because we fought too well. And we remember what that made us." Marcus followed her into the corridor. Behind them, the chamber lights dimmed. The dome showed the stars burning in the infinite dark. Cold. Distant. Uncaring. Tomorrow, those stars would witness something the galaxy had not seen before. Humanity showing its scars. And explaining why those scars were warnings, not weaknesses. Marcus hoped the galaxy was ready. He suspected it was not. The human embassy on Council Station Prime was small. Just 6 rooms carved into the outer ring of the massive station. The walls were gray metal. The furniture was functional but plain. There were no decorations except for a single image of Earth hanging in the main room. Blue and green and white. Beautiful. Fragile. Home. Elena sat alone in her private office. The lights were low. Before her, a holographic screen glowed softly, casting blue shadows across her face. She had been sitting there for 3 hours, reviewing files. Files that most humans had never seen. Files that were sealed under 40 different security protocols and accessible only to those with the highest clearance. She watched cities burn. She watched soldiers die in trenches filled with mud and blood. She watched mushroom clouds rise over places that used to have names. She watched concentration camps and killing fields and mass graves. She watched humanity at its absolute worst. The door opened behind her. Marcus entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. He set one beside Elena and kept the other for himself. He did not ask permission to stay. He simply sat in the chair beside her desk and watched the screen. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The files played in silence. Images of horror that humanity had inflicted upon itself. Numbers so large they stopped meaning anything. 6 million. 60 million. 4 billion. "I was born in New Jakarta," Marcus said finally. His voice was soft. "My grandmother survived the Southeast collapse. She was 11 years old when the water wars started. She watched her parents die of the fever plagues. She ate bark and insects to stay alive. She was one of 53 survivors from a city of 2 million. Elena did not look away from the screen. "My grandfather was a soldier in the Siberian reclamation. He never spoke about what he saw there. But sometimes at night, he would wake up screaming. My grandmother would hold him and tell him it was over. That the world had changed. That we would never go back to those days." She paused. He never believed her. He died thinking humanity was one bad decade away from destroying itself again. Was he wrong? Marcus asked. Elena finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired. I do not know. That is what frightens me most. I genuinely do not know if we have changed, or if we have simply been lucky. A soft chime filled the room. Incoming communication. Elena touched a panel on her desk, and the holographic screen shifted. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared, looking out at them from Earth, 23 light-years away. Admiral Chen was 70 years old, with silver hair cut military short and a face marked by decades of hard decisions. She wore the uniform of Earth's Unified Defense Force, dark blue with silver stars on the shoulders. Behind her, Elena could see the Operations Center of Earth Defense Command, where officers monitored humanity's fragile borders. Ambassador Torres, Chen said. Her voice was formal, but Elena heard warmth beneath it. I received your request for protocol remembrance. Level Omega clearance. Full historical disclosure to the Galactic Union. She paused. Do you understand what you are asking for? Yes, Admiral. These files contain our darkest moments. The wars we fought against ourselves. The weapons we built that could have ended all life on Earth. The atrocities we committed in the name of ideology, resources, survival, or simple hatred. Chen leaned forward. If you show the galaxy what humanity is capable of, they will never look at us the same way again. Some will fear us. Some will want to destroy us before we become a threat. Some will try to exploit that fear for political advantage. I know, Elena said. But they are already voting to reduce us to protected species status. They already see us as weak. If we do nothing, humanity will lose its sovereignty within a generation. Our colonies will be claimed by others. Our people will have no voice. We will become what they already believe we are, irrelevant. Chen was quiet for a long moment. What do you intend to show them? Elena gestured at the screen. The truth. All of it. World War I and the trenches. World War II and the Holocaust. The nuclear bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Cold War and how close we came to extinction. The biological weapons of the 2040s. The AI conflicts. The Great Collapse and the 4 billion dead. She met Chen's eyes directly. I want them to understand that when humanity chooses peace, it is not because we are weak. It is because we know exactly what war costs. We have paid that price repeatedly, and we decided we would not pay it again. And if they see us as monsters? Chen asked quietly. Then they will respect us as monsters who chose to be better, Elena replied. That is more than they give us now. Admiral Chen studied Elena's face for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. Very well. I am authorizing level Omega clearance. All historical files will be available to you within the hour. Use them as you see fit, Ambassador. Show them what we were. Show them what we survived. And show them why we will never go back. Thank you, Admiral. Chen's expression softened slightly. Elena, off the record, be careful tomorrow. The galaxy is not kind to species it fears. We spent a century building goodwill, showing that humans can be trusted. If you shatter that image, we may not be able to rebuild it. The galaxy is also not kind to species it sees as weak, Elena replied. We have tried goodwill. We have tried patience. We have tried being the peaceful newcomers who make no trouble. And now they are voting to strip away our rights. Sometimes, Admiral, the only way to earn respect is to show your teeth. Even if you never intend to bite. Chen nodded. Good luck tomorrow. All of Earth is watching. The screen went dark. Marcus set down his teacup with trembling hands. You really are going to show them everything, he said. It was not a question. Yes. They will see the concentration camps. The gas chambers. The nuclear weapons. The engineered plagues. The AI that we built and then had to destroy when it decided humanity was inefficient. They will see all the ways we have tried to exterminate ourselves. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. What if they decide we are too dangerous to exist? Elena stood and walked to the window. Beyond the transparent aluminum, Council Station Prime turned slowly, a massive ring of metal and light against the stars. Thousands of species lived here in peace, protected by laws and treaties and mutual respect. Then we will face that challenge, she said. But I believe most species will understand. Because every species that reaches the stars goes through a similar crucible. They face extinction. They face wars that threaten everything. They look into the abyss of self-destruction and make a choice. She turned to face Marcus. We chose survival. We chose to change. We chose peace not from weakness but from hard-won wisdom. If the galaxy cannot respect that, then perhaps we do not belong here. Marcus stood as well. What do you need me to do? Rest, Elena said. Tomorrow will be difficult. I will need you beside me. I will need someone who understands what these images mean. Someone who carries the scars even if they are not their own. She smiled slightly. Your grandmother survived the collapse. She taught you that survival requires both strength and restraint. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy that lesson. Marcus nodded. He set his teacup on the desk and walked to the door. Then he paused and looked back. Ambassador, do you think we have truly changed? Or are we just one crisis away from becoming the monsters in those files again? Elena did not answer immediately. She looked at the image of Earth on the wall. Blue and green and white. Home to 9 billion souls who had chosen to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm, to remember their darkness so they would never embrace it again. I think we carry the capacity for both, she said finally. The monster and the healer. The destroyer and the builder. We are not saints, Marcus. We are survivors who learn from our mistakes. And that makes us dangerous to those who would mistake our kindness for weakness. She paused. Tomorrow, the Galactic Union will learn that lesson. And they will decide whether they want humanity as a friend or an enemy. I hope they choose wisely. Marcus left quietly. Elena returned to her desk and began preparing her presentation. She worked through the night, selecting images and data with care. Each piece told part of the story. Each number carried weight. Each atrocity served as evidence. By morning, she was ready. The files were organized. The message was clear. And humanity's truth was prepared to step into the light. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant. But somewhere among those stars, Earth turned in its orbit. 9 billion people going about their lives, unaware that their past was about to be revealed to a galaxy that had never known such darkness. Elena hoped they would understand. She hoped the galaxy would see humanity's scars as proof of wisdom, not weakness. She hoped tomorrow's revelation would earn respect, not fear. But hope was not strategy. And Elena had not survived 17 years of galactic diplomacy by relying on hope alone. Tomorrow, she would show the galaxy what humanity truly was. And then she would face whatever came next. The night passed slowly. The station turned. The stars watched. And in a small office on the outer ring, a diplomat prepared to change everything. The revelation. The council chamber filled slowly. Representatives arrived in groups, speaking in hushed tones. There was an energy in the air that Elena recognized from her years of diplomatic service. Anticipation. The kind that preceded either triumph or disaster. Today, the galaxy would witness one or the other. Elena stood on the central platform, the same spot where accused species had stood for 3 centuries. The platform was raised 15 feet above the main floor, surrounded by the floating platforms of the 43 member species. Every eye could see her clearly. Every species could judge her without obstruction. That was the point. The council believed in transparency, at least when it suited them. Marcus stood at the edge of the human delegation's platform, his tablet clutched tightly. He had not slept. Elena could see the exhaustion in his face, but also something else. Determination. He understood what today meant. Not just for humanity's political standing, but for the truth itself. Chancellor Vorik arrived last, as was his custom. The Krell warrior made no attempt to be subtle. His 4 arms swung as he walked, each movement displaying the coiled strength beneath his scarred plates. He ascended to his platform and sat without ceremony, his golden eyes fixed on Elena with the intensity of a predator watching prey. Diplomatic Prime Thesha was already seated, her platform positioned beside Vorik's. She had chosen a different form today, something more angular and severe. Her skin had shifted from purple to deep blue, and her eyes were sharper. She wanted to appear strong, Elena realized. Strong and unmoved by sentiment. It was a message to the rest of the council. The chamber filled with the sounds of settling, limbs folding, platforms adjusting, translation matrices activating. Then silence fell. 43 species waited. The galaxy held its breath. Chancellor Vorik spoke first. His voice filled the chamber like rolling thunder. Ambassador Elena Torres of Earth. You stand before the Galactic Union to address concerns about humanity's fitness for full membership. You requested 30 minutes to demonstrate that your species is not, as we have concluded, fundamentally unsuited for the challenges of galactic civilization. He leaned forward slightly. We are prepared to listen. Though I suspect 30 minutes will not be sufficient to overcome 17 years of observed behavior. Scattered sounds of agreement rippled through the chamber. Elena waited for them to fade. Then she spoke. Thank you, Chancellor Vorik. I will not need 30 minutes. 20 will be sufficient. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried no trace of fear. But before I begin, I must ask the council a question. How many of your species nearly destroyed themselves before reaching the stars? Silence. The question hung in the air like smoke. I do not mean metaphorically, Elena continued. I mean truly, completely, irreversibly destroyed. How many of you came within a single decision, a single moment, a single failure of restraint, of ending your entire species through your own actions? More silence. Then, slowly, a platform descended slightly. The gesture indicated assent. It belonged to Ambassador Kresh of the Thorian Combine. The hive mind's voice clicked through the translation matrix. The Thorians experienced the unification plague. 73% of our population died before we achieved collective consciousness. Our species survived because we evolved beyond individual conflict. Another platform descended. This one belonged to a species Elena barely knew, the Ythrian Ascendancy. Their representative looked like flowing water held in a vaguely humanoid shape. The Ythrians fought resource wars for 6 centuries. We nearly rendered our homeworld uninhabitable. We survived by leaving it behind and learning to live in space itself. A third platform. A fourth. A fifth. Slowly, more than half the council indicated that yes, they had faced extinction by their own hands. They had survived, changed, and reached the stars. But they had come close to oblivion first. Elena nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. It helps me understand that you may recognize what I am about to show you. That you may understand why humanity makes the choices we do. She touched the control device on her wrist. The air above the central platform shimmered. Then images began to form. Holographic projections, massive and detailed, floating in the center of the chamber where everyone could see them clearly. The first image showed a battlefield. Human soldiers in primitive uniforms crouched in ditches carved into mud. Bodies lay everywhere, twisted in death, half buried in the churned earth. Strange metal machines sat motionless, rusting monuments to industrial killing. This is called a trench, Elena said quietly. For 4 years, human beings lived in holes dug into the ground. They killed each other with bullets, with poison gas, with artillery that turned bodies into fragments. 9 million soldiers died. 21 million more were wounded. We called it the war to end all wars. The image shifted. Now it showed cities on fire. Buildings collapsed into rubble. Civilians running through streets filled with smoke and death. Strange aircraft dropped explosives from the sky. Tanks rolled through neighborhoods, crushing everything beneath their treads. 23 years later, we started again. This time, we fought across every continent. We killed 60 million people. Soldiers and civilians. Men, women, children. We invented new ways to murder efficiently. We built factories whose only purpose was death. Elena's voice remained steady, but something had changed in her tone. Something hard. We industrialized genocide. The next image made several council members recoil. It showed bodies. Piles of them. Thin bodies with hollow eyes, stacked like cordwood behind chain-link fences. The image was in black and white, but somehow that made it worse. The absence of color made it feel more real, more documentary, more true. These are concentration camps, Elena said. We built them to exterminate people we decided were inferior. We killed 6 million Jews. 5 million others. Romani people. Disabled people. Political prisoners. Homosexuals. We gassed them, starved them, worked them to death. We did this systematically, with bureaucratic efficiency, with record-keeping and quotas and industrial processes. The chamber was completely silent now. No one moved. No one spoke. Several delegates had turned away from the images, but most watched with expressions Elena could not read. That war ended with these, Elena said. The image changed again. Now it showed a mushroom cloud rising against a pale sky. Below it, a city simply ceased to exist. Buildings vaporized. People turned to shadows burned into concrete. Fire spreading outward in a wave that consumed everything. Nuclear weapons. We invented them to end that war. They worked. One bomb killed 80,000 people in seconds. Another killed 70,000 more 3 days later. The heat was so intense it turned sand into glass. The radiation poisoned survivors for decades. Elena paused. The mushroom cloud image remained, burning in the center of the chamber. We built more. Many more. For 50 years, humanity lived knowing we possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy ourselves completely. Several times over. We came close to using them on multiple occasions. A single miscommunication. A radar malfunction. A political miscalculation. Any of these could have ended human civilization. She looked around the chamber. We survived by luck as much as wisdom. The images continued. Chemical weapons that melted lungs. Biological weapons that turned human immune systems against themselves. Engineered diseases that targeted specific genetic markers. Weapons designed to kill slowly, painfully, efficiently. We created horrors because we could, Elena said. We justified them because we were afraid. Afraid of each other. Afraid of ideology. Afraid of scarcity. We transformed our fear into weapons and then wondered why we could not feel safe. Diplomatic Prime Thesha finally spoke. Her voice was quieter than Elena had ever heard it. These are ancient crimes. Primitive barbarity from a primitive time. You cannot justify your current weakness by pointing to barbarism committed centuries ago. Elena turned to face the vexary diplomat directly. You are correct that these events are historical. But you are wrong about what they justify. I am not explaining our weakness, Prime Thesha. I am explaining our restraint. She gestured, and new images appeared. These showed human cities as they looked now. Gleaming towers reaching toward orbital stations. Parks where children played beneath artificial gravity domes. Hospitals treating patients from a dozen species. Universities where human and alien scholars worked side by side. After the Great Collapse, which killed 4 billion people in 5 years, humanity made a choice. We looked at what we had done to ourselves and decided to change. Not because we became weak. Not because we lost the capacity for violence. But because we understood, finally, what violence costs. The images shifted again. Now they showed data. Military readiness reports. Weapons development files. Strategic defense analyses. But these were marked with classification levels Elena had never revealed before. You believe humanity is weak because we retreat from conflicts. Because we accept unfavorable terms. Because we pay ransoms instead of fighting pirates. Elena's voice grew harder. You mistake our choices for our capabilities. You see our restraint and assume we have no strength. That is a dangerous error. She touched her wrist control again. New images appeared, and several council members sat forward with sudden attention. The images showed ships. Hundreds of them. Sleek vessels bristling with weapons, hidden in deep space far from any sun. They were dark, cold, dormant. Waiting. The Aurora fleet, Elena said. 412 ships built over the past 80 years. Hidden in deep space. Crewed by volunteers who agreed to spend their lives waiting in darkness for a call we hope never comes. Each ship carries weapons that would violate 17 different galactic treaties if we ever acknowledged their existence. Chancellor Vorik stood abruptly. His massive form seemed to fill his entire platform. You lie. We have monitored human shipyards. We have tracked your construction. You have 47 vessels. That is all. You have monitored the shipyards we allowed you to see, Elena corrected calmly. We learned during our self-destructive centuries that transparency is a choice, not a requirement. We chose to appear weak while preparing for the possibility that the galaxy might not be kind to peaceful species. She gestured again. More images. These showed asteroid fields surrounding every major approach to human space. But the asteroids were marked with glowing indicators. Weaponized asteroid fields. Each rock is fitted with guidance systems and fusion charges. They look natural. They are not. Any hostile fleet entering human space would face 30,000 projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. We learned during our wars that kinetic weapons are simple, effective, and difficult to defend against. The council chamber erupted. Voices shouted in dozens of languages. Platforms shifted as delegates argued with each other or demanded explanations. Elena waited patiently for the chaos to subside. When silence finally returned, it was Thesha who spoke. Her form had shifted again, becoming more fluid, less certain. Why, she asked simply. Why build such weapons if you have dedicated yourselves to peace? Why create instruments of mass death if you have truly changed? Because we remember, Elena said. We remember what happens when peaceful species trust that peace will last forever. We remember what happens when the strong prey upon the weak without consequence. We remember our own history, when those with power used it to crush those without. She paused. We built these weapons because we understand something you do not. Peace is not the absence of strength. Peace is the choice not to use the strength you possess. She looked directly at Vorik. The Krell warrior had sat down again, but his golden eyes burned with new intensity. You called us battle-fearing. You believe we retreat because we lack courage. You think we negotiate because we cannot fight. Elena's voice dropped lower, but somehow it filled the chamber completely. You are wrong. We retreat because we know what war costs. We negotiate because we have seen what happens when negotiation fails. We choose peace because we remember, with perfect clarity, what we become when we choose war. The images shifted one final time. These showed human history in reverse. The mushroom clouds shrinking. The cities rebuilding. The concentration camps being liberated. The trenches being filled. The weapons being dismantled. And finally, images of modern humanity. People living, working, creating, building, healing. We are not battle-fearing, Elena said. We are battle-scarred. We carry wounds that never fully healed. We remember atrocities we committed against ourselves. And we decided that we would rather be called weak by species who never face their own darkness than become the monsters we know we can be. She spread her hands, and the images faded. The chamber was left in normal light, with Elena standing alone on the central platform, a small figure who had just revealed humanity's deepest shame and greatest strength. You asked why we deserve full membership in this union. I cannot answer that question for you. But I can tell you what humanity brings to the galaxy. We bring the wisdom of species who almost destroyed themselves and chose differently. We bring the restraint of those who know their own capacity for evil. We bring the hope that violence is not inevitable, that change is possible, that even the darkest history can give birth to a better future. Elena paused, letting her words settle. But do not mistake that hope for weakness. Do not assume that because we choose peace, we are incapable of war. Every weapon I showed you is real. Every ship exists. Every defense system is operational. We built them because we understand that the galaxy respects strength, not good intentions. But we keep them hidden because we refuse to define ourselves by our capacity to kill. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate who would hold her gaze. Tomorrow, you will vote on whether humanity remains a full member of this union. Whatever you decide, know this, we will survive. We always do. If you grant us protected species status, we will accept it and work within those constraints. If you strip our rights, we will rebuild them. If you threaten our existence, we will defend ourselves with everything we have learned from our bloody, terrible, instructive past. Elena's voice softened slightly, but the steel remained beneath. We came to the stars hoping to find species who had transcended the darkness we knew. We wanted to learn from you. To be inspired by you. To prove that intelligent life could cooperate rather than compete, build rather than destroy, unite rather than divide. She smiled slightly, and it was a sad smile. Perhaps we were naive. Perhaps the galaxy is not ready for species who choose peace over power. But we made our choice, and we will live with its consequences. She touched her wrist control one final time. The holographic displays vanished completely. The chamber returned to normal. Elena stood in silence. That is all I have to say. The future of human-union relations rests with your wisdom. I hope it proves equal to the task. She descended from the central platform and walked back to the human delegations area. Her footsteps echoed in the absolute silence. Marcus moved to meet her, but she shook her head slightly. Not yet. Let the silence work. For 97 seconds, no one in the council chamber spoke. 43 species processed what they had seen and heard. Several delegates were visibly shaken. Others wore expressions of shock, or fear, or newfound respect. Finally, Chancellor Vorik stood. He looked different now. The arrogance had drained from his posture. His golden eyes showed something that might have been understanding, or perhaps concern. The council requires time to consider what we have learned, he said slowly. We will reconvene in 3 hours to discuss and vote on humanity's status. He looked at Elena. Ambassador Torres, you have given us much to think about. More than I expected. More than I wanted. He turned to address the full council. We called humanity battle-fearing. We assumed they avoided conflict from weakness. Ambassador Torres has shown us our error. They avoid conflict from knowledge. From memory. From scars that run deeper than any we imagined. Vorik's voice grew softer, thoughtful. The Krell have a saying, the warrior who has never lost cannot understand victory. Perhaps there is wisdom in another saying, the species who has nearly lost everything understands what truly matters. He sat down heavily. Other delegates began to murmur. The sound filled the chamber like rising water. Diplomatic Prime Thesha stood gracefully. Her form had settled into something resembling her original appearance, but more subdued. She looked at Elena with new eyes. I studied human diplomatic behavior for years, Thesha said quietly. I thought I understood your species. I was wrong. You showed us courtesy, and I mistook it for subservience. You showed us patience, and I mistook it for fear. You showed us restraint, and I mistook it for weakness. She paused. I apologize for my blindness. Elena inclined her head slightly. No apology is necessary, Prime Thesha. How could you know what we did not show you? We hid our past because we were not proud of it. Perhaps that was a mistake. Perhaps honesty, even painful honesty, serves peace better than comfortable silence. The chamber began to empty as delegates filed out to their private chambers. They would discuss, debate, and ultimately decide. But something had changed. Elena could feel it in the way they moved, in the glances they cast toward the human delegation's platform, in the careful distance they maintained. They had seen humanity's scars. Now they were deciding what those scars meant. Marcus approached Elena as the last delegates departed. His hands were steady now, and his eyes were clear. That was extraordinary, he said quietly. You showed them everything. the worst of what we were, and somehow made them see it as proof of what we could be. Elena sat down on the edge of the platform. Suddenly, she felt every one of her 62 years. I showed them the truth, Marcus. Whether that helps or harms us remains to be seen. Some species will see our weapons and demand we disarm. Others will see our history and want us destroyed before we can threaten them. Still others might see an opportunity to exploit our reluctance to use force. But some will understand, Marcus said. Some will see what you wanted them to see. That peace chosen from strength is worth more than peace enforced from weakness. Elena nodded slowly. Yes. Some will understand. And perhaps that will be enough. They sat in silence as the chamber's cleaning systems activated. Soft lights adjusted. Air circulators hummed. The station continued its endless rotation, carrying thousands of species through the dark between stars. 3 hours later, the council reconvened. The delegates returned with serious faces and quiet voices. The energy from before was gone, replaced by something heavier. More thoughtful. Chancellor Vorak called the session to order. He stood on his platform and looked around the chamber. We have discussed Ambassador Torres's presentation extensively, he said. We have debated its implications for galactic security, for Union policy, and for humanity's place among the stars. He paused. We have reached a decision. Elena felt Marcus tense beside her. She kept her face calm, her hands folded, her breathing steady. Whatever came next, humanity would face it. The motion to reclassify humanity as a protected species is withdrawn, Vorak announced. Further, we propose that humanity be granted full membership rights immediately, without the customary additional evaluation period. Humanity has demonstrated something we value, the wisdom to know their own capacity for darkness and the strength to choose differently. Relief flooded through Elena, but she kept it hidden. This was not victory yet. Just the first step. However, Vorak continued, and Elena's relief evaporated. We cannot ignore what we have learned. Humanity possesses significant military capability that was deliberately concealed from this council. While we understand the reasoning, we cannot allow such deception to continue. Elena stood. What do you propose, Chancellor? Transparency, Vorak said simply. Humanity will register its true military assets with the Union. Your defense systems, your hidden fleets, your weapons development programs. In return, the Union will guarantee your sovereignty and territorial integrity. No species will be permitted to threaten human worlds. You will have the protection of the full council. It was a reasonable request. Almost generous. But Elena heard the unspoken message beneath. We know you have teeth now. We want to know exactly how sharp they are. The human government will need to approve such transparency, Elena said carefully. But I believe it can be arranged. With appropriate safeguards to ensure our defensive capabilities are not compromised. Thesha spoke next. I propose we go further. Humanity has unique experience with species-level existential threats. Your history, painful as it is, contains lessons we should learn. I suggest we establish an advisory committee staffed by human experts to help other species facing internal conflicts. You can teach us how to step back from the brink. How to choose change over extinction. It was an extraordinary offer. It would give humanity significant influence in galactic affairs, positioning them as wise counselors rather than weak newcomers. Elena bowed slightly. The human delegation would be honored to serve in such a capacity. We have learned our lessons in blood and ash. If we can help others avoid similar pain, then perhaps our suffering was not entirely without purpose. Ambassador Kresh's platform descended. The Thorian hive mind spoke in its flat, emotionless translation. The Thorians support this proposal. We nearly destroyed ourselves before achieving unity. Had we known others had survived similar crucibles, we might have avoided much suffering. Humanity's scars can light the way for others. One by one, other delegates indicated their support. Not all of them. Some species remained skeptical, concerned about humanity's hidden weapons or uncomfortable with the violent history that had been revealed. But enough agreed. More than enough. Chancellor Vorak raised one massive hand, calling for silence. Then it is decided. Humanity will retain full membership status. They will work with the Union to establish appropriate transparency regarding defense capabilities. And they will share their hard-won wisdom with species who request such guidance. He looked directly at Elena. His golden eyes held something new. Not fear, not pity, but recognition. The acknowledgement of one survivor to another. Ambassador Torres, you showed us something important today. You showed us that strength and restraint are not opposites. That remembering darkness does not mean embracing it. That choosing peace is not the same as accepting weakness. He paused. The Krell respect warriors. Today, we learned that humanity produces warriors of a different kind. Warriors who fight against their own worst instincts. That is a battle worth honoring. Elena felt tears threaten behind her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Not here. Not now. Thank you, Chancellor Vorik. Humanity is honored by your words and grateful for your understanding. We came to the stars hoping to find partners in peace. Today, we have found something better, witnesses who understand why peace must be chosen, defended, and treasured. The council session ended with formalities. Documents would be drafted. Treaties would be signed. Committees would be formed. But the important work was done. Humanity had shown its scars and earned not pity, but respect. As the delegates filed out, several approached Elena. They asked questions about human history, about the weapons humanity had built, about how humanity had changed. She answered honestly, holding nothing back. The time for secrets was past. Hours later, Elena stood in the embassy's main room, looking at the image of Earth on the wall. Blue and green and white. Beautiful. Fragile. Home to 9 billion souls who could now continue reaching for the stars without chains. Marcus entered quietly. He carried 2 cups of tea again. Old habits. It worked, he said simply. You showed them the monster, and they saw the choice to be better. Elena accepted the tea gratefully. We were lucky. If Vorik had been more rigid, or Thesha more manipulative, or the council less willing to listen, today could have ended very differently. But it didn't, Marcus said. Because you understood something they didn't. You knew that showing weakness would invite exploitation. But showing strength wrapped in wisdom would invite respect. Elena sipped her tea. It was bitter, the way she liked it. We showed them what we are, Marcus. Survivors. Builders. Healers who remember when they were killers. And somehow, that was enough. They stood in silence, watching Earth turn on its distant axis. Somewhere down there, 9 billion people were living their lives, unaware that their past had saved their future. Do you think we've really changed? Marcus asked suddenly. Or are we just better at controlling the monster? Elena considered the question. It was the same one her grandfather had asked himself every night. The same question that haunted every human who learned their species' true history. I think we are always both, she said finally. The monster and the healer. The destroyer and the builder. We carry the capacity for both, and we choose each day which one we become. That is what makes us human. Not our weapons. Not our history. But our capacity to choose. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we must keep choosing wisely. Yes, Elena agreed. Every day. Every decision. Every moment when violence seems easier than patience. We must remember what we were and choose to be something better. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. But they did not seem quite so far away anymore. Humanity had earned its place among them. Not through conquest or dominance, but through honesty and wisdom born of pain. The galaxy had called humans battle-fearing. One diplomat had shown them the truth, that humans feared battle because they understood it too well. And in understanding, had found the strength to choose peace. That choice, Elena thought, was worth protecting. Worth fighting for, if necessary. Worth passing to the next generation as humanity's most important lesson. We survived ourselves, she thought. Everything else is just details. The station turned. The stars watched. And humanity took another step forward into the infinite dark, carrying its scars like armor and its wisdom like a light.